in our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, November 8th. Deeply disappointing facts have emerged about police response on the night of the deadly crowd crush in Itaewon just ahead of Halloween, as a number of high-ranking officials appear to have been absent from duty. On the trade front, the good news, Korea's current account has shifted back to surplus. The bad news, the size of that surplus is a tremendous decline on year. Over in the US, American voters are heading to polling stations within the next 24 hours to cast their ballots for the midterm elections, which look to shape the Biden administration's remaining term in office. We begin in the U.S. Voters there are poised to cast their ballots in less than a day as midterm voting begins on Tuesday local time, with the results set to shape the remainder of the Biden administration's term in office and ultimately the 2024 presidential race there. Our Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
The U.S. will hold its midterm elections on Tuesday to decide who controls the nation's Congress. This year, all 435 seats in the House of Representatives and 35 of the 100 Senate seats are being contested. In addition, 36 states will be electing their governors. The outcome of the elections will have a big impact on the remaining 2 years of President Joe Biden's presidency. While the Democratic Party held a majority in both the House and Senate for the past 2 years, they do so only by a very narrow margin. This, in turn, makes the midterm elections a tight contest indeed. Some key races will be Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. While experts expect the overall results to be in by around 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Wednesday, some states like Nevada and Georgia could take longer if their races are very close. If the Democrats do come out on top, then President Biden will be able to continue with his plans on climate change, expand government-run healthcare programs, protect abortion rights, and tighten gun control. However, if the Republicans take control of either the upper or lower house, this would be a challenge for Biden. The midterms could also serve as a clue to who might be in the running to be the Republican presidential candidate in 2024. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Up across the border, North Korea is harshly condemning U.S. allegations that it has been secretly shipping artillery shells to Russia in support of its invasion of Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Groundless rumors of arms dealings. That's what North Korea is calling Washington's claims that Pyongyang is supplying artillery ammunition to Moscow for its war in Ukraine. According to the North State-run KCNA on Tuesday, citing North Korea's Ministry of National Defense Vice Director of Military Foreign Affairs, the U.S. is persistently spreading false rumors of arms trade between Pyongyang and Moscow. It added that the continued accusations are part of the United States' hostile attempt to tarnish the image of North Korea in the international arena. It also stressed that it does not have any plans to conduct such sales in the future. The latest remarks from the North come as White House National Security spokesman John Kirby last week said artillery from North Korea to Russia was being moved undercover in shipments to the Middle East or Africa. However, Kirby said that the U.S. did not know whether Russia actually has received the ammunition, but they were trying to monitor the shipments. He also noted that the United States believes a significant number of shells sent is enough to help Russia prolong the war, but not enough to give it an advantage over Ukrainian forces. Back in September, Pyongyang denied Washington's claim that it was planning to provide ammunition to help the Russian military replenish its stockpiles, which were said to be severely depleted by the now 8-month-old war. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Egypt, the head of the UN has shared a disturbing portrait about the fate of the world in the absence of concrete commitment to climate action. Our Kim Jong-shil has more on his sobering words.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres began his COP27 climate summit speech with a strong message.
We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator.
The UN chief told world leaders on Monday at the UN Climate Change Conference in Egypt that the planet is fast approaching a tipping point that will make climate chaos irreversible.
Humanity has a choice: cooperate or perish. It is either a climate solidarity pact or a collective suicide pact.
The climate pact Guterres refers to is one between the world's richest and poorest countries to accelerate a shift from fossil fuels to alternative energy sources. On Monday, Guterres urged the leaders to speed up funding to poorer countries already struggling due to the effects of climate change. The UN chief also emphasized the need for cooperation between the US and China. He called them the two largest economies and said that they have a particular responsibility to join efforts to make the pact a reality. World leaders from more than 100 countries are participating in this week's climate summit. French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak were among the leaders who called for collective efforts despite the ongoing war in Ukraine.
Putin's abhorrent war in Ukraine and rising energy prices across the world are not a reason to go slow on climate change. They are a reason to act faster.
So war should not slow us down. On the contrary, it has to consolidate our own agenda on biodiversity and climate, which are essential.
China and India are not participating despite being two of the three most carbon-emitting countries in the world, and U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to come later in the week after the U.S. midterm elections. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Also in related news, the World Health Organization believes this year's blistering heat has killed at least 15,000 people in Europe alone. The organization's regional director for Europe, Hans Kluge, shared the shocking estimate during the ongoing UN climate summit over in Egypt. Now, citing the EU's climate change agency, he also noted the past summer was the hottest on record in Europe and warned that the situation will worsen in the future. Accordingly, he has called for the adoption of a more sustainable model of consumption and production. The special probe into the tragic events of the night on October 29th in Itaewon has revealed some disturbing facts about police authorities and their dysfunctional chain of command. Our Lee Kyung-eun reports.
Where were the senior police officers? That's the key question in the ongoing investigations into the Itaewon crash. To answer it, an independent investigation team launched by the police is probing senior authorities in charge of Yongsan-gu district, where the accident occurred. At the center of the scrutiny is the now suspended Yongsan-gu police chief Im Jae on suspicion of professional negligence resulting in death for allegedly arriving at the site too late and taking too long to report the emergency. The head of Yongsan Fire Station, Choi Seung-bam, faces the same accusation for allegedly failing to promptly communicate with the police and respond to the situation. And Park Ki-young, the head of Yongsan-gu District Office, who allegedly failed to come up with a crowd control management plan despite knowing of the risks. Meanwhile, in a higher police organization, the Seoul City Police Agency, senior officer Yoo Mi-jin is accused of being absent from her seat in an emergency monitoring room on the night of the crash. The investigation team says the probe could expand into even higher level organizations, including the Seoul City government and the Interior Ministry, which hold ultimate responsibility for maintaining public safety. Here at the National Assembly, there are also growing calls for a parliamentary probe into the accident from the main opposition Democratic Party. But the ruling People Power Party firmly rejects the idea, citing the potential for confusion and delays. While a parliamentary probe remains uncertain, lawmakers have held the first Q&A with relevant agencies. Much attention was on the growing calls for Interior Minister Lee Sang-min to resign. When asked about it, he said simply that he will do his best to carry out his duties. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
In other news, we have a rather mixed reading for local trade. Korea's current account has rebounded, but the size of September surplus is significantly smaller compared to that posted a year ago. Our Shin Se-byuk has more on the latest findings.
South Korea posted a current account surplus in September after recording a deficit in the previous month. But there's a sharp on-year decline due to higher import bills. According to preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the surplus was at a little over $1.6 billion in September. The balance returned to the black after last month's shortfall of $3.05 billion. But the total plunged by 85% on year. The goods balance posted the biggest fall. In September, it logged a surplus of less than $500 million. It's much smaller than the corresponding figure from 2021, when it was more than $9.5 billion. This came mostly due to higher import costs, driven by skyrocketing energy and raw material prices. In September, imports increased by 18% compared to a year ago. Lingering geopolitical and economic uncertainties at home and abroad are causing energy and raw material prices to spike. Also, global inflation is causing major countries to adopt monetary tightening policies, making things worse. What's more, this trend is dragging down South Korea's exports. There was a 0.7% on-year fall registered in exports. That's down for the first time in nearly 2 years. Petroleum and auto exports saw two-digit increases, logging 51% and 35% jumps respectively. But chemical and steel products as well as chips posted on-year falls. Such a decrease can be attributed to strict COVID-19 restrictions and lockdowns in China that have been undercutting demand for Korean goods. In fact, shipments to China shrank 6.5% on year. As for the cumulative current account surplus for the January to September period, it was at just over $24 billion, down more than $43 billion from a year earlier. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics' global market share for semiconductor memory chips contracted to an 8-year low in the third quarter. According to the International Data Corporation Tuesday, Samsung's market share retreated 2.7 percentage points on quarter to 41%. The company's global supply shrank by almost 34% on quarter to some $7.4 billion. The drop in sales also comes in line with the overall downturn in the global market, as it plunged by 30% on quarter in the third quarter amid slowing demand. Come 2024, 18-year-old Koreans will be eligible for civil service examinations for grades 5 and 7 public positions. Now, currently, the examinations are open to those aged 20 and above. According to the Ministry of Personnel Management, the revision to the decree on public officials' appointment examinations was approved on Tuesday by the State Council. Entry-level positions at grades 8 and 9 are already open to 18-year-olds. However, the age requirement for examinations to join the Corrections and Protections Bureau will be kept at a minimum of 20. Meanwhile, as part of broader efforts to ease the nation's carbon footprints, the ban on single-use items will be further expanded starting November 24th. Now, this means carrying your own grocery bag to a convenience store will be of great convenience, if you'll pardon the pun. Here's Shin Ha-young.
From the end of November, convenience stores in South Korea will no longer be allowed to give customers plastic bags. Instead, they will have to use paper bags that are kinder to the environment. This is following amendments made by the nation's Environment Ministry. The new rule applies to bakeries too, but at restaurants that do take out, customers have to pay for plastic bags. This comes 2 years after they were banned from large stores like supermarkets. In addition to single-use cutlery being banned, paper cups and plastic straws will no longer be provided at restaurants or cafes. Stores larger than 3,000 square meters will not be allowed to provide plastic umbrella covers. Violators will be fined up to 3 million Korean won, or around $2,100. However, there will be a 1-year grace period before penalties are enforced. However, some people are not fully aware of the new rules.
I didn't know about the new rules. People buy things from convenience stores as they are in a hurry, so I'm not sure they have a reusable bag with them all the time.
Firms, on the other hand, have been preparing for the new changes.
We had already stopped ordering our eco-friendly plastic bags. Currently, we are selling the ones we have in stock before the rules take effect.
Stores and restaurants aren't the only ones that will face the change.
South Korea's cheering culture is expected to change as new rules prohibit plastic items used for cheering from sports venues, including basketball arenas. Other single-use cheering items like this one will no longer be provided for free.
These things help fans come together when they're cheering on their team.
In the long term, I think it's reasonable to restrict single-use cheering items as it's important to protect the environment.
Meanwhile, the government expects to move closer to its goal of carbon neutrality.
In light of the COVID-19 outbreak, using disposable items was granted temporarily, which resulted in a rise in their use. Through the new rules, we aim to spread awareness of the matter and reduce the use of disposable items.
The same official added that from an economic point of view, companies will be able to save money and resources that were spent on producing and disposing of single-use items. 신하영, Arirang News.
A total lunar eclipse will be visible here in South Korea later on this Tuesday evening, as well as a rare lunar occultation of Uranus in which the planet passes directly behind the moon, obscuring it from view. According to the Gwacheon National Science Museum, the lunar eclipse will be visible at around 8 p.m. It also says the moon will appear, that is, blood red when it's completely in the Earth's shadow. The same phenomenon will not be visible here in South Korea within the next 200 years. Meanwhile, the total eclipse will be visible in North America, Asia and the Pacific region. The next total lunar eclipse will happen in the year 2025. Some health experts say rice flour is a great substitute for wheat flour, since most wheat flour contains gluten, a protein that can disrupt digestion. Now, that being said, the making of rice flour is being actively promoted as one way to address the abundance of rice supplies here on the local front. Our Chung Won-ju explains.
60 types of bread of various shapes and flavors fresh from the oven. All are made from rice flour, not wheat. Sales of rice bread in 2022 have increased by more than 50% compared to 3 years ago when it was first introduced. The use of rice flour has also increased from 10 tons last year to 20 tons this year.
Rice bread has texture comparable to bread made with wheat flour. The texture of rice is unique in ways wheat is not, so I think it may be even better.
Karumi is a type of rice that can be made into rice flour. It's different from most rice, and it can be turned into flour without needing to be soaked in water first. It therefore significantly reduces water use, labor, and powdering production costs. It's also strong against pests and has a short cultivation period, making it beneficial for farmers to grow.
If karumi can replace the demand for wheat flour and reduce the cultivation area of edible rice, I think rice farmers and the government would both benefit.
The Rural Development Administration plans to replace wheat flour by increasing the cultivated area of karumi to 42,000 hectares by 2026.
A direct payment system for those who grow strategic crops could solve problems of low income for certain farm households. It's necessary to develop processing technology that could lead to increased demand.
Although processing prices have been lowered, the cost of making rice flour with karumi is twice that of making wheat flour. If the price problem is solved through mass production and increased government support, then issues related to consumer health and rice demand may also be solved. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In a written statement on Monday, a cardinal from the French Catholic Church has admitted to sexually abusing a child. Cardinal Jean-Pierre Ricard said that 35 years ago he abused a 14-year-old girl. The former Archbishop of Bordeaux added that he is stepping down from his high-ranking role. The admission comes after a report was issued last year, shedding light on a number of child sex abuses within the French Catholic Church. Apart from Ricard, 10 other bishops are in the crosshairs of sexual abuse accusations being looked into by French police and church authorities. It found that over 70 years, individuals associated with the church sexually abused around 330,000 children in France. Many of the cases were swept under the rug in what the report called a systemic cover-up. The U.S. Department of Justice on Monday announced the recovery of 50,676 stolen Bitcoin. Details revealed the seizure of the crypto assets last year from the Georgia home of James Zhong, who pleaded guilty to a single charge of wire fraud on Friday. The Bitcoin, with a current value of over $1 billion, was found on various devices, including a small computer stored in a popcorn tin. $600,000 in cash was also found. The Bitcoin was stolen from dark web marketplace Silk Road in 2012 after a payment system flaw was exploited. Zhong faces 20 years in prison if found guilty. After being denied entry into Italy on Monday for being, quote, too healthy, 3 migrants blocked on a rescue ship in Sicily jumped into the sea in an act of desperation. They were quickly pulled from the water after jumping off a ship run by Doctors Without Borders. The ship docked in the port of Catania on Sunday, where local authorities allowed 357 to disembark but refused entry to 215. This comes as migrants rescued by docked humanitarian ships have been met with resistance by Italy's new hard-right government, which has refused to respond to calls for safe harbor and drawn a hard line against illegal immigrants. Over the weekend, Italy's Sicilian ports saw at least 4 boats carrying over 900 migrants ask for safe harbor and to allow passengers to disembark. But among those ships allowed to dock, only minors and the sickly have been given permission to leave the vessels. And finally, the US's largest Powerball jackpot is set to be drawn, coming in at $1.9 billion. The draw is set to take place on Monday at 10:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The record prize comes after there was no winner of Saturday's jackpot of $1.6 billion, which itself was a record breaker. New highs in Powerball jackpots are nothing new, ever since organizers changed the odds of winning from 1 in 175 million to 1 in 292 million in 2015. There has been no winner in over 3 months and 40 consecutive drawings since August 3rd, when the winner walked away with $206 million. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Tuesday afternoon. Another autumn day with pleasant and mild temperatures. Seoul hitting 18 degrees and 21 degrees in Busan. But things will change quickly once the sun sets. The temperature difference is very big today, double figures in most regions. So please dress accordingly to keep yourself warm. And it's sunny across the country, but if you're in Chungcheongnam-do province, the air quality will be poor all day long. Highs will hover around 20 degrees, 18 in Seoul, 20 in Daegu, and 21 in Busan. Now, Ulsan, Busan, coastal areas of Gangwon-do province and a few more inland regions have been under a dry weather advisory for several days. And where there's prolonged period of dry weather, a small spark could turn into a large-scale fire. Please avoid starting fires. But this weekend, rain will be a welcome sight across the country. And as it was mentioned earlier, you shouldn't miss the total lunar eclipse this evening when the moon will turn a dark reddish hue. It's a pretty rare event that's visible with your bare eyes. Now, let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
That ends Tuesday's afternoon newscast. But do stay with us for our panel session coming up right after this break. Thank you for now.
It's finally your vacation. Are you looking for a nice place to spend your vacation? Our future generations may never be able to visit these vacation spots because of global warming. Tons of greenhouse gases produced by fossil fuels. They make our planet warmer by the year. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015, aims to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. But in 2021, the UN warned that global temperatures could rise by 2.7 degrees by 2100.